What's up guys, Andy from Aquatic Images. Today we're going to check out the DL200 underwater housing from Ikelite, giving you my thoughts on the housing after using it professionally for the past 15 months. Let's check it out. Now before I get into this review, I'd just like to point out that while this housing is made for the Panasonic GH5 and GH5S, the DL200 housing series are actually quite similar. Some of the things I discuss in this review will be specific to the GH5 and GH5S model, but mostly it will also apply to other DL200 housings. I'm sadly not sponsored by Ikelite, and I've spent a whole bunch of money getting this set up. The Ikelite DL200 housing is depth rated down to 60 meters or 200 feet. It features several dome or flat port options and offers compatibility with a wide array of micro four thirds and full frame lenses. It provides access to most of the buttons on the camera, along with full view of both the viewfinder and the screen. The housing is priced at $1,695, not including domes and ports. So I purchased this housing in December of 2018 and I've been using it professionally for about 15 months. I should mention that I'm reviewing this as a professional recreational diver and amateur free diver. In this review, I will be sharing with you my experiences with the housing and also some of the pros and cons I found while using it professionally. We're also going to look into some of the accessories that I recommend you get with the housing. So here's the housing the way I have it kitted out for the Sigma 18-35mm f1.8 lens. It's built out of polycarbonate and ABS plastic, and the build quality is solid. It has a bunch of buttons on the back here and on the top that allows you to access most of the camera functions. The only button you don't get access to is the joystick on the back of the camera. The dome and ports are not included with the housing but are absolutely necessary for it to work. It only comes with one handle, but I do recommend that you get two. Some of the cons of the button layout on the GH5 and GH5S model is, in my opinion, the on-off switch, the mode dial, and the video record button. It has one large main O-ring at the back of the housing. That's the orange bit that you can see right here. The back is held in place by 3 lid snaps, which ensures an even pressure at the O-ring and therefore a correct seal. At the front, you'll find more O-rings that help seal the housing. There's one for each port. These O-rings require silicone grease to seal, while the main O-ring on this particular housing at the back does not. However, always check your manual to make sure if this also goes for your underwater housing. Also, there's normally 2 O-rings on every button and lever. The button layout is good and fairly easy to understand if you're familiar with the buttons on the camera body. Most of them are push buttons that lead straight to the corresponding controls on the camera body, while a few of the levers are positioned slightly differently to allow better access to some functions. Many of the buttons also have their corresponding controls laser etched into the back for better overview. The big wheel on the side here connects you to either the zoom or focus ring on your lens. Ikelite housings do not allow manual operation of both these functions at the same time, so you have to choose what is most important for your lens. You can get quite smooth motion from the wheel, and if you have your camera set on a tripod, you can pull nice looking zoom or focus work while using this wheel. The buttons and levers are well made. The buttons are spring loaded and push back after you let go, meaning they don't block or stay in contact with the camera body. On the right hand side, you'll find 2 large levers that connect you to the shutter button on the front and AF on focus button on the back. Both of these are also spring loaded and easy to operate. On top, you have the lever for turning the camera on and off, operating the wheel on the top of the camera, and setting your picture mode. On the back, you can adjust the mode dial and back wheel of the camera. So basically, you can access all important camera features to allow full operation of the camera. Some of the cons of the button layout on the GH5 and GH5S model is, in my opinion, the on-off switch, the mode dial, and the video record button. After you turn the camera on, the on-off lever needs to be pulled out and moved to the other side of the switch to turn the camera off again. This is a minor thing and probably more a nuisance to me because I used the Ikelite 7D housing for 10 years and they had a better solution for this. Next, the mode dial, which needs to be spun around to get the mode you need. You can't really see the dial from the top, which means that you need to use the viewfinder as a reference while doing it, and also try to memorize the order of which they appear. This again is not a big issue at all, and remembering the order of your modes isn't that difficult, but I just feel it could have been designed better. The video record button, however, is pretty much placed in a useless position. Considering that both the GH5 and the GH5S cameras are primarily used for their video capabilities, I don't understand Ikelite's choice of button placement here. There's no practical way of reaching it while your hands are placed out on the handles. The workaround is to change the shutter button to start-stop video recording instead. While I don't have a problem with that, I do miss having that lever free to get a few quick stills while shooting video, which was something that I had on my old 7D system. I do love having access to all the custom buttons, and there are some very useful ways of adapting shortcuts for underwater use. For example, you can use the pad buttons to switch between your custom white balance setups. I use the 8-inch dome for both my Sigma 18-35 and my Tokina 11-16mm lenses. The dome is made out of acrylic material, which is great if you get scratches, as you can repair them yourself instead of sending them in for repairs, as you have to do with ones made out of glass. It also comes with the dome port cover. Now, the build quality of both the dome and ports are solid. This system is called Drylock, or DL for short, and is far better than the old FL system used by Ikelite on past products. The housing also comes with several mounting options for lights or strobes, monitors, and tripods. One of the biggest drawbacks for me about this housing is actually the weight reduction. Ikelite decided to reduce the weight of the DL200 housing to make it easier to travel with and carry around. One of my absolute favorite things about the old Ikelite housings was how perfectly buoyant and balanced they were. Now you need to add weights to the housing to make it neutral or negative in the water and to balance it out. Their solution for adding back the weight is in my mind useless too, but more on that in a later video. Now let's talk about some of the accessories that I recommend that you look into for this system. As mentioned earlier, the extra handlebar is essential for a steady grip while shooting video. I also got these trigger extensions for both the shutter and back button focus. I have medium-sized hands, and when I received the housing, I wasn't able to comfortably reach both of the levers at the same time. On the side of the housing, you'll notice that there's this strange-looking valve covered by a plug. This is a vacuum valve and is used for pre-dive leak checks. This is fairly standard on most modern underwater housings, but I'm happy to see Ikelite included it too. The pump is sold separately and looks like this. It has a hose that connects to the valve, a pressure gauge, and a hand pump on the handle. Not only is this a vacuum pump, but it doubles as an exercise tool. I have to do roughly 100 of these before getting the gauge up to 10, which is the recommended pressure buildup. Once there, you should wait about 30 minutes to make sure that the housing is properly sealed. It can be pretty hard to tell exactly where the needle is at, and if you have a tiny leak, it will be difficult to tell as the needle will only move slightly. I recommend using the shadow from a fixed light source and line it up perfectly with one of the markings on the gauge. In addition to these accessories, I recommend getting a lanyard to keep your camera safe while diving, an acrylic dome scratch removal set for if or when you get a scratch on your dome, and you will also need an Ikelite trim weight system, or better yet, a custom setup like I use. So to sum it up, I've been using this system for 15 months and I'm very happy with how it performs. There's plenty of underwater housing options out there, but they vary greatly in price and build quality. I feel that Ikelite hits the mark pretty well with a great product that's not too expensive compared to the competition. More importantly, I have no problems recommending this housing to professionals as a cheaper alternative to aluminium housings. Finally, if you have any other questions about the DL200 housing or my underwater setup, drop me a comment. As always, thank you for watching this video, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of my underwater content in the future. That's my surface interval, time to take this bad boy diving. See ya!